"Mommy, how many days until Christmas?" Sophia asked for the 10th time that week. Abby gave a tired smile as she passed the needle through the fabric. She was hemming a pair of pants for her upstairs neighbor, another $2 that would go into the glass jar hidden in the kitchen cabinet. "Only one day left, my love. One day." Lily jumped off the sofa. "Mommy, are we still going to the restaurant with the lights?" The restaurant. It was all the twins had talked about for weeks. Abby had made the mistake of walking past the place with them one afternoon in December. The girls pressed their faces against the glass, wide-eyed, watching the families dining under the golden lights hanging from the ceiling. "Mommy, look! It looks like the princess's castle," Sophia had said. "When are we going to eat there?" Lily asked, full of hope. Abby didn't have the heart to say no, not at that moment, not when their bright blue eyes were shining so intensely. "One day we will. I promise." And now, after weeks of saving every coin, every dollar left over from her sewing jobs, Abby had $20 in the jar. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a simple dinner. Or at least, that's what she hoped. "Yes, we are," Abby confirmed, putting her needle away. "Tomorrow night," the girls shouted with joy and hugged each other, spinning around the small apartment living room. "I'm going to wear my blue dress," Sophia announced. "I'm going to wear the red one," Lily added. Abby watched them, her chest tightening. They were so small, so innocent. They deserved the whole world. And all she could give them was dinner at a restaurant. But it would be the best dinner they had ever had. She would make sure of it. On Christmas Eve, Abby woke up early. She carefully ironed the girls' clothes, combed their golden curls, and put on matching ribbons, Sophia in blue, Lily in red. "Do we look beautiful, Mommy?" Sophia asked, twirling in front of the mirror. "The most beautiful in the world." Abby put on the only outfit she had for such occasions, a simple white blouse and black pants. Nothing special, but it was clean and well ironed. She took the glass jar and counted the money one more time. $20. She took a deep breath and put the bills in her wallet. "Let's go, girls, before it gets late." The walk to the restaurant was magical for the twins. The snow was starting to fall, covering everything in a soft white blanket. The streets were decorated with colorful lights, illuminated Christmas trees, and festive shop windows. "Mommy, look at the snowman," Lily pointed to a decoration, "and Santa Claus." Sophia pulled on Abby's hand. The two of them never stopped talking, excited, anxious. Abby held their hands tightly, trying to memorize this moment, their joy, their innocence, their hope. When they arrived in front of the restaurant, the girls stopped on the sidewalk. "This is it, Mommy?" Sophia said, her eyes shining. "Are we really going inside?" Lily asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes, we are." Abby pushed the glass door open. The warmth of the place hit her face, the smell of hot food, spices, fresh bread. The golden lights the girls admired so much were there, hanging from the ceiling, creating a soft and welcoming glow. There were families at every table, parents laughing with their children, couples making toasts, children running between the chairs. Abby felt a tightness in her chest. She didn't belong in this place, not anymore, not since John died. "A table for 3, the hostess said, smiling and grabbing 3 menus. "Yes, please." They were led to a table near the window. Lily clapped her hands. "Look, Sophia, we got the window table." "I told you we would." The two sat down and pressed their faces against the glass, watching the snow fall outside. Abby pulled her chair out slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility. $20. She had $20. She opened the menu, and she felt the floor disappear from under her feet. The prices. The prices were much higher than she remembered. Much higher. Soup, $15. Salad, $18. Kids' hamburger, $22. Abby flipped through the entire menu, her heart racing, looking for something, anything that would fit her budget. "Mommy, what are we going to eat?" Sophia asked, trying to read the large letters. "Let me see, sweetheart." Abby's hands were shaking. She turned the page, and then she saw it. Pasta with tomato sauce, $18. It was the only dish she could afford. There would only be $2 left, but it would work. "Mommy," Lily pointed to a picture on the kids' menu. "Can we order this?" It was a portion of chicken fingers with French fries. The picture was colorful, appetizing. The girls looked at it with that sparkle in their eyes. How much is it? Sophia asked anxiously. Abby looked at the price, $25 each. She felt her throat close up. I'm sorry, she said softly, almost voiceless. We only have $20. The girls' smiles faded a little. They looked at each other, confused. Only 20? Sophia repeated. But we thought, Lily started, but then stopped. Abby closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She had failed once again. I didn't know it was so expensive, she admitted, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, girls. I thought we could have a nice meal here. But it's okay, Mommy, Sophia interrupted, placing her small hand on Abby's. Yeah, we can share something, Lily added, smiling. Abby looked at them. 5 years old. 5 years old. And they already knew how to be strong. They already knew how to comfort. Are you sure? We always share everything anyway, Sophia said with a shrug. And it tastes better that way, Lily added, swinging her little legs under the chair. Abby blinked quickly, holding back her tears. You're my brave girls. Did you know that? The waiter approached with a notepad in his hand. Have you decided? Abby took a deep breath. Yes, 1 pasta with tomato sauce. A glass of water and 2 small juices, please. He wrote it down, looked at the 3 of them, and Abby saw that look. That look she knew so well. Pity. Discomfort. But he didn't say anything. He just nodded and walked away. The girls went back to drawing on the paper napkins with a pencil Abby always carried in her purse. They drew trees, stars, snowmen. Abby watched them, her heart aching. They deserved so much more. What Abby didn't know was that 2 tables away, a man with graying hair and tired blue eyes was watching everything in silence. Edward had come to the restaurant to escape his loneliness, Christmas Eve, alone, again. But now, seeing that mother and those 2 blonde girls sharing such a small dream with so much dignity, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He discreetly called the waiter over. That table over there, he pointed to Abby and the girls. I'd like to pay their bill, and I want to invite them to have dinner with me. Please ask them if they'll accept. Gently. The waiter seemed surprised but agreed. A few minutes later, he approached Abby's table. Excuse me, ma'am. The gentleman over there, he pointed to Edward, would like to know if you and the girls would care to join him for dinner. He's alone and, well, it would be pleasant company for him. Abby turned her head and saw Edward. He gave a slight wave with a kind smile. She hesitated. She didn't know this man. But there was something in his eyes, something sincere. He seems nice, Mommy, Sophia whispered. He looks like the grandpa from the stories, Lily added. Abby took a deep breath. All right, we can go. The waiter smiled and led them to Edward's table. He stood up as soon as they approached. Thank you for accepting, he said, pulling out the chairs for the girls. I'm Edward. Abby, and these are Sophia and Lily. A pleasure, girls. Hi, Mr. Edward, the 2 said in unison. They sat down. Edward picked up the menu and handed it to Abby. Please order whatever you'd like. Don't worry about a thing. Abby opened her mouth to protest, but he raised his hand. I insist. It would be my pleasure. The girls looked at their mother, hopeful. Abby sighed and nodded. All right. Sophia and Lily flipped through the menu, their eyes shining. Mommy, can we order the chicken now? Lily asked quietly. Yes, you can, sweetie. The 2 nearly jumped for joy. The waiter returned. Edward ordered 2 plates of chicken fingers for the girls, a risotto for himself, and asked what Abby would like. I'll stick with the pasta. Are you sure? You can have anything you want. I'm sure. Thank you. The waiter jotted everything down and walked away. Edward looked at the girls, who were excitedly fidgeting with their napkins. Do you like to draw? We love it, Sophia answered. I draw better, Lily teased. No, you don't, Edward laughed. It was a quiet laugh, but genuine. I'm sure you both draw very well, Abby. Watched it all, still trying to understand why this man was doing this. May I ask, why did you invite us? Edward grew serious for a moment. He looked at the glass of wine in front of him. Because I saw you sharing that dish. and I saw something I haven't seen in a very long time. What? Family. A real family. Abby didn't know what to say. I have a daughter, Edward continued, but we don't speak, not for years. And today, on Christmas Eve, I came to have dinner alone because I don't have anyone else. Sophia and Lily stopped drawing and looked at him. Why don't you talk? Sophia asked. Sophia, Abby scolded. It's okay, Edward said. I made mistakes, big mistakes, and she pulled away. I don't blame her. Have you ever said you're sorry? Lily asked, her head tilted. Edward gave a sad smile. Not yet, but maybe one day I'll have the courage. You should do it soon, Sophia said seriously, because Christmas is for being together. Edward felt a lump in his throat. These little girls spoke with a wisdom he lacked. You're right. The dinner arrived a few minutes later. The plates were beautiful, steaming, fragrant. The girls' eyes widened when they saw the chicken. Wow, they whispered together. Go ahead and eat, Edward said, smiling. They ate with relish, chewing slowly, savoring every bite. Abby ate her pasta in silence, still processing everything. Edward cut into his risotto but spent more time watching the girls than eating. This is delicious, Mr. Edward, Lily said with her mouth full. So delicious, Sophia added. I'm glad. The conversation flowed naturally. Edward asked about school, their favorite toys, what they wanted for Christmas. I want a doll, Sophia said. Me too, Lily added, one with real hair. I'm sure Santa will bring them, Edward said with a smile. Abby looked away. She knew there would be no dolls, not this year, but she wasn't going to spoil this moment. When they finished eating, the waiter brought dessert, 2 slices of chocolate cake for the girls. We didn't order this, Abby said. It's on the house, the waiter replied with a wink. The girls ate the cake with joy, licking their fingers, laughing. Edward watched it all with a smile on his face. Abby noticed he seemed different, lighter, as if this evening had lifted a weight from his shoulders. When it was all over, Edward asked for the check. Abby tried to protest one more time. Please, let me pay for my part. Don't even think about it, Edward said firmly but gently. Tonight the bill is mine. She sighed and agreed. Outside, the snow was falling heavily now. The girls ran on the sidewalk, trying to catch the flakes with their hands. Abby turned to Edward. Thank you for everything. You turned this night into something special for them. Edward shook his head. No, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You have no idea how good it was to spend Christmas Eve with company, with a family, even if it's not mine. Abby felt her eyes sting. You deserve to have your family back. Maybe. But for tonight, being with you all was more than enough. He waved to the girls, put his hands in his pockets, and started walking in the opposite direction. Mr. Edward, Sophia shouted. He stopped and looked back. Merry Christmas! Edward smiled, a real smile that lit up his face. Merry Christmas, girls! And he disappeared into the snow. Abby stood there, her daughters by her side, feeling that something had changed. She couldn't explain what, but she knew this meeting hadn't been a coincidence. The next day, Abby took the twins for a walk to look at store windows. They stopped in front of a toy store. The window was filled with dolls of all types, sizes, and colors. Sophia and Lily were mesmerized. Mommy, Sophia whispered, look at all the dolls. I want one so much, Lily said, her eyes shining. Abby felt a lump in her throat. She knelt down to their level. I know, my loves. One day. I promise you will have them. When? Sophia asked innocently. Abby didn't know what to say. Soon. Just then, a familiar voice sounded behind them. Abby. She turned, surprised. Edward was standing there in a dark coat and a gray scarf. He smiled when he saw them. Mr. Edward, the girls shouted together and ran to him. Edward knelt and opened his arms. They hugged him tightly. What a nice surprise, he said, laughing. What are you all doing here? We're looking at the dolls, Lily answered, pointing to the window. They're so pretty, Sophia added. Edward looked at the window, then at Abby. She shrugged, a little embarrassed. We were just taking a walk. Edward was silent for a moment, watching the girls who had gone back to pressing their noses against the glass. Then he turned to Abby. May I give them a gift? Abby blinked, surprised. What? Dolls? May I give them dolls as a gift? Abby hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse. She didn't want to seem like she was taking advantage of his kindness, but another part, the part that saw the sparkle in her daughter's eyes, wanted to accept. Edward, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, he interrupted gently. But I want to. Please. Abby looked at the girls, then at him. There was sincerity in Edward's eyes. It wasn't pity. It was something else. All right, she said quietly. Edward smiled and approached the girls. Girls, would you like to choose some dolls? Sophia and Lily looked at him, then at their mother in disbelief. Can we, Mommy? Sophia asked, her voice full of hope. Yes, you can, the two shouted with joy and clapped their hands. Inside the store, Sophia picked a doll with curly blonde hair and a sparkling blue dress. This one, Mommy. She looks like me. Lily chose one with straight light brown hair, wearing a red dress with golden details. I want this one. Edward paid, and the girls hugged him so hard he almost lost his balance. Thank you, Mr. Edward, Sophia said, her voice choked with emotion. It's the best present of our lives, Lily added. Edward felt his eyes sting. He hugged them both back, closing his eyes for a moment. You're welcome, girls. You're welcome. And something inside him began to heal. 2 days after the toy store, someone knocked on Abby's apartment door. She was sewing a skirt for a client, her fingers quickly passing the thread through the fabric. The girls were on the living room rug playing with the dolls Edward had given them. I wonder who that is, Abby murmured, setting her sewing aside. She opened the door and was surprised to see Edward standing there, his hands in his pockets and a slightly sheepish smile on his face. Hi, he said, almost shyly. Sorry to show up unannounced. I was just passing by and thought I'd say hello. Abby blinked, still processing. Oh, of course, come in. Edward entered slowly, looking around. The apartment was small, simple, but clean and tidy. Mr. Edward, Sophia was the first to notice. She dropped her doll and ran to him. You're back! Lily did the same, hugging his leg. Edward laughed, kneeling down to their level. I am back. I missed you. We missed you too, Sophia said, pulling his hand. Come see our dolls. He let himself be led to the rug. He sat on the floor cross-legged, and the girls showed him the dolls, both talking at once about the names they had chosen, the stories they were making up. Abby stood by the door, watching. There was something strange about the scene, something good. Edward, a man she barely knew, was sitting on her living room floor, listening to her daughters with genuine attention. Do you want some coffee? She asked. Edward looked up at her and smiled. I'd love some. They talked for almost 2 hours. Edward played with the girls, helped them with a puzzle, listened to their made-up stories. Abby went back to her sewing, but every now and then she would look up at them, feeling something strange in her chest. As the sun began to set, Edward stood up. I think I've overstayed my welcome, he said, smiling. You haven't overstayed anything, Abby replied. The girls hugged him at the door. Will you come back tomorrow? Lily asked hopefully. Edward looked at Abby as if asking for permission. She nodded. If you want me to, I'll be back. We want you to, they both said together. Edward smiled and left. Abby closed the door slowly, leaned against it and took a deep breath. Something was changing, and she didn't know if she should be worried or just let herself feel it. The next day, Edward came back, and the day after that. He always showed up in the mid-afternoon when the sun began to slant in the sky. He never brought anything with him, no toys, no gifts, no bags, just himself. And that, somehow, was more than enough. The girls began to wait for him. They would listen for the sound of footsteps in the hallway. When they recognized his walk, they would run to the door before he even knocked. Mr. Edward, they would shout, opening the door with shining eyes, and Edward, always with that calm smile, would kneel down to greet them. The weeks passed. Edward always found small ways to help, always discreet, always respectful, always without making a fuss. Once he brought a new coloring book for the girls, saying he had bought it by mistake, and the store wouldn't accept returns. Another time he brought clothes that Liam no longer fit, practically new. Sarah knew what he was doing, but he did it with so much care, with so much delicacy that she couldn't refuse. One Sunday, it started pouring just as they were about to leave the park. A heavy downpour. Edward looked at the dark sky, then at Abby. "Did you come by bus?" "We always come by bus." "Let me give you a ride, it's raining too hard." Abby hesitated, biting her lip. "You don't have to." "I know, but it will take a while for a bus to pass, and the girls will get soaked." Lily, who was standing next to Edward holding his hand, pulled on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, I want to ride in the car." Abby looked at her daughter, then at Edward, and sighed. "All right, thank you." From that day on, whenever it rained, Edward gave them a ride. He never made it seem like a favor. He always said it was on his way, even when it clearly wasn't. One afternoon, while the girls played in their room, Edward and Abby sat at the kitchen table. He was drinking coffee. She was folding clean clothes. "You never stop, do you?" Edward commented. Abby looked at him and gave a slight smile. "I don't have much time to stop." "But you should. Everyone should," she shrugged. "When you're raising daughters alone, rest is a luxury." Edward was silent for a moment. There was something in that sentence that felt heavy. "Can I ask you something?" he said cautiously. "You can." The girl's father. Abby stopped what she was doing. She stood with her back to him for a few seconds, her hands resting on the edge of the table. Then she took a deep breath and turned to face him. "He passed away," she said, her voice firm but low. "Almost 4 years ago." Edward felt his chest tighten. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you." She pulled out a chair and sat at the table across from him. "It was a car accident. He was coming home from work. It was winter. The road was slippery and he lost control." Edward didn't say anything. He just listened with all the attention he could give. "It was sudden," Abby continued, her voice starting to tremble slightly. "In the morning, he left like always. Kissed the girls, said he'd be back soon, and he never came back." She paused, blinking quickly to push back the tears. The girls were so little. They had just turned 1. They barely remember him. Sometimes they ask, They ask about their father, and I tell them stories. I show them pictures. But to them, it's like he's someone from a book, someone who existed, but whom they never really knew. Edward felt his heart ache with every word. "And you? How did you deal with it all?" he asked, his voice low. Abby gave a sad, tired smile. "I didn't have a choice. I woke up the day after the funeral, and they were there, crying, hungry, needing me, needing a bath, food, to be held. So I did what I had to do. I got up and moved on." "But you missed him." "Of course I did," Abby replied, her voice cracking a little. "I still do, every day. When the girls do something funny and I want to share it with him. When I'm tired and wish I had someone to help me. When the loneliness hits at night and I remember I'm alone." She took a deep breath. "But I can't sink into it. Because they depend on me." Edward watched her, amazed. There was something extraordinary about this woman. "You're incredible," he said without thinking, the words coming straight from his heart. Abby blinked, surprised. "Me?" "No, I just do what any mother would do." "No," Edward shook his head firmly. "Not every mother would. Some people give up. They throw in the towel. They let the pain win. But you don't. You hold it all together, alone. And you still manage to give them love. You still manage to smile. That's not a small thing, Abby. That's extraordinary." Abby looked away, embarrassed. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not that kind. "I just do what needs to be done," she murmured, her voice low. Edward was quiet, watching her. There were so many things he wanted to say, so many things he felt but didn't know how to put into words. "They're lucky to have you," Edward said finally, his voice filled with sincerity. Abby looked at him, her eyes shining. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not enough, that they deserve more, a better house, toys, new clothes, a father." "You are more than enough," Edward interrupted firmly. "So much more. They have what matters. They have love. They have presence. They have someone who fights for them every day. That's worth more than anything." There was a silence between them. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of understanding, of respect, of something deep that neither of them knew how to name. "Thank you," Abby said, her voice low and choked with emotion, "for listening, for understanding. Thank you for trusting me." They sat there at the table in a silence that said more than any words ever could. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Edward and Abby sat in the living room. He was on the sofa. She was in the chair next to it. The silence between them was comfortable. There was no need to fill every second with words. "Can I ask you something?" Abby said, breaking the silence. "Of course." "Why do you come here?" Edward was quiet for a moment, looking at the empty cup in his hands. "Because here I feel alive." Abby frowned. "Alive?" "Yes. Out there in my world, everything is empty, big but empty. I have a huge house, but it's just a space. It has no life, no sound, no nothing." He looked around. "But here there's laughter, there's movement, there's simplicity. And that reminds me of things I'd forgotten." Abby didn't say anything. She just watched him. "You don't have to come all the time, you know," she said quietly. "We don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Edward replied, looking directly at her. "You are a gift." Abby felt her eyes sting. She blinked quickly, looking away. "Stay for dinner tomorrow," she said, changing the subject. Edward smiled. "I'd love to." One afternoon, Edward was sitting on the floor with the girls, building a castle out of colorful blocks. "Mr. Edward, are you going to stay forever?" Lily asked suddenly. Edward stopped, holding a red block in his hand. "I don't know, Lily." "But we want you to stay," Sophia said, moving closer to him. Edward looked at the two of them, then at Abby, who was sitting on the sofa with some sewing in her hands. "I want to stay too," he said sincerely. "But life doesn't always let us choose everything." The girls didn't fully understand. They just accepted it and went back to playing. But Abby understood, and she felt her chest tighten. She knew that this, as beautiful as it was, wasn't guaranteed. People like Edward didn't stay in lives like hers forever. That wasn't how the world worked. But for now, he was here, and that would have to be enough. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Edward sat at the kitchen table watching Abby fold laundry. There was a heaviness about him that day. "Is everything okay?" Abby asked. Edward took a deep breath. "Can I tell you something?" Abby sat down, giving him her full attention. "I told you I have a daughter, Ruby, but I didn't tell you why we don't talk." He paused, looking down at his cup. "I cheated on her mother," he said quietly. "Ruby was 12 when she found out, old enough to understand. And she didn't forgive me. She pulled away, stopped talking to me, and I thought it was for the best, that she deserved to live without me." Abby listened without judgment. "But you miss her," she said softly. "Every day," Edward admitted, his eyes welling up. "I look at Sophia and Lily, and I remember Ruby at that age, and I remember that I destroyed all of it." "Have you ever tried to talk to her?" Edward shook his head. "I'm afraid that it's too late." Abby reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "Edward, continuing to hide won't fix anything. You've already taken the first step. You've acknowledged your mistake. You want to fix it. That's more than most people do." She squeezed his hand firmly. "It's never too late to try. Go to her. Speak from the heart. No excuses. Just tell the truth." Edward looked at her, amazed. "Thank you for believing in me." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Abby said, "including you." 3 weeks later, Edward drove 3 hours to Ruby's town. His hands sweated as he parked in front of the familiar house. He knocked. His ex-wife answered, then called Ruby. She appeared, 16 now, blonde hair in a ponytail, blue eyes distant but curious. "Hi, Ruby," Edward said, his voice cracking. "Hi." Heavy silence. "Ruby, I know I have no right to be here, but I had to see you. I had to tell you that I miss you so much." Ruby's eyes glistened. "I miss you too, but you hurt Mom." "I know, and there's no excuse. I was wrong. So wrong." If I could go back, I would change everything. I can only try to be different now. Have you changed? She asked. I'm trying, every day. Ruby was quiet, then she looked at the package in his hands. What's that? It's for you. She opened it, a sketchbook and colored pencils. You remembered I like to draw, she said, surprised. Of course I remembered. I remember everything, Ruby. She clutched the book to her chest. Thank you. Do you want to go for a walk? Edward asked. To that park you liked? Ruby hesitated, then nodded. Okay. They walked to the park and sat on a bench. They didn't talk much, but they were there together. I missed you, Ruby said suddenly, even when I was angry. Me too, every single day. But I'm still hurt, she admitted. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me now, maybe never. But I want to try. I want to be present in whatever way you'll let me. Ruby looked at him, tears in her eyes. Okay. As the sun set, Edward walked her home. At the door, Ruby stopped. Will you come back another day? Edward felt hope surge through him. Whenever you want. Ruby smiled faintly. Okay. 2 days later, Edward returned to Abby's apartment, smiling, a real smile. Did everything go okay? Abby asked. Better than I could have hoped, Edward replied. She listened. She gave me a chance. Oh, and she asked if I would come back. Abby's eyes shined. Edward, that's wonderful. And I only did it because you encouraged me, he said, holding her hand. If I had the courage, it was because you gave me strength. And I want to thank you. He paused. I want to offer you a job at my company. Textile design department, fair salary, stability, benefits, all official. Abby was speechless. This isn't charity, Edward continued. It's recognition. You deserve this. Abby wiped her tears, smiling. I accept. 3 weeks later, Edward showed up with Ruby. Abby, this is Ruby, Edward said proudly. Hi, Ruby said nervously. Sophia and Lily ran out. Mr. Edward. They stopped, seeing Ruby. Girls, this is Ruby, my daughter. Ruby knelt. Hi, girls. You're pretty, Sophia said. You look like a princess, Lily added. Ruby laughed. Within minutes, the twins pulled her to play. Edward and Abby watched from the kitchen. They're getting along well, Abby said. For the first time in a long time, Edward replied. I feel like I have something real. A family. Abby squeezed his hand. You do. Edward looked at Ruby playing with the girls, then at Abby. And in that moment, 4 people who had been lost found something rare. Hope, connection, and a family built not on blood but on presence, on choice, on love.